Any elected MP is supposed to work with the best interests of his constituents in mind, especially when it comes to national issues. Now, something that is lacking, sorry, my dog's just joined me, from many MPs, well, something I notice anyway, is that they never bother to explain anything to you. If I was an MP, I would do regular mail shots explaining about the big stuff, what's going on, so that you have an informed choice when anything happens. And what I found is one particular politician who's pretty good at explaining stuff and getting it across to the public is Nigel Farage. Now, as you know, with Southport, I'm sorry I keep going on about this, but the fact is we should be going on about this. Whoever's become the leader, I think it's Kemi Bendot of the Tory party, yawn, I've still got a sore finger. Who cares? Where are they going, that bunch? Because until they get shut of people like Jeremy Hunt who aren't real Tories, what are they exactly? Who do you represent? I mean, who do Labour represent? They don't represent the working man. They represent people coming into the country and champagne socialists. That's their catchment. So where do we go? Where do the ones go that are working people, proper working people? God forbid you've bought your own home and you've got some say. If you've got over £6,000 and you're a pensioner, you're loaded. You've got no winter fuel allowance. That's what we're dealing with these days. So it's important to get MPs that are prepared to work for you. There's 5 MPs currently and probably 1 or 2 Tories, 5 MPs from Reform who are doing just that. Now, at the time of the Southport attack, one of the reasons that things got out of hand was the speculation of the whodunit from the public. Because basically, we all had an idea what was going on. Because we're not new to this, are we? With all the things that's happened to us over the last few years since Charlie Hebdo. We know what's going on. And God forbid you correlate it to extremism. Oh no, you're bad, you're far right. So with that in mind, I thought at the time, the first thing the left did was try and jump on it after the riots took place, which were in the main protest. But like anything else, when you get crowds of people together, there's always opportunities to join those crowds. The crowd will be sincere in the main, but then the opportunists, the looters, the ones that do the damage, the dickheads, they'll always join in. That's going to happen wherever you go. And I condemn that. I condemn all of it. If you were looting and stealing pies from Greggs, why would you do that? Wrecking libraries. What point are you proving? None. You're not a protester. You're a bad 'un. That's what my dad would have called you. So, but having said that, a man went to jail, Peter Lynch, who didn't do anything violent but managed to plead guilty to a charge that claimed he was doing violent disorder. There's no evidence to show that he did. But you're under pressure, you've been arrested, you've got health conditions, you're an older man. You've managed to protest through Brexit and not be arrested because you've done it in the same way. People have the same MO. I sit on here on social media. I never ask for anyone to take to the streets. That's my MO. I try and give information out so that you have more to work off when you're dealing with things. That's the way I do it, and that's the way Peter Lynch operated. Sadly, it ended up in a jail sentence for him, and that's how crazy this country has come. We haven't got free speech. We've got limited free speech. Currently, you can still slag MPs off, so I'm making hay while the sun shines. They're getting a bellyful from me because they deserve it. Now, while they've had us all distracted, again, I'll mention the families of those affected, the little girls who died, the ones that tried to save them. You know, this will be life-changing stuff for them. They'll never be the same. It'll always be something they have to live with. They might wake up at night sweating, thinking about it. Imagine those parents every time they hear Taylor Swift music. It'll just turn their stomach. They have to live through that, and these politicians hardly mention it. They use the children as a point of time reference. Yes, 3 months ago, 3 little girls were murdered. That's it. That's all they got from Tim Farron, remember. I won't let you forget that, Tim Farron, you Christian. And then he went on to say it saddened him. It saddened him to see prejudice. It's not prejudice when you've been proven right. It's only prejudice when you're saying things about people that are wrong, that's unfair and unjustified. But when you're thinking someone is the sort of attacker that you suspect and they're proven to be that type of person, that's not prejudice, that's getting it right, Tim. Maybe your big forgiveness, your Christian forgiveness, should run a bit deeper to the masses of people who were appalled by what's gone on and the way the government's treated us thereafter. So let's get back to Farage. At the time, the left-wing movement, and there are a little cabal of people on Twitter, mainly on Twitter, and they started this hashtag, Farage riots. Now, Nigel Farage didn't have anything to do with that, anything at all, and Nigel, like the rest of the Reform MPs, will be under really severe scrutiny, because MPs are anyway, and the spotlight's on Reform because they're causing a lot of problems. They're taking seats from Tory and Labour councillors. They've just won one in Birmingham. That will continue, I suspect. They've got 5 seats in Westminster, one of the most important places you can have a voice. And we need those voices. Oh, we do indeed. We need dissenters in that place. Because, let's face it, a lot of people are upset about Richard Tice's comment, that lot. If there were ever a bunch of people that deserved being called that lot, it's Westminster. Because that lot have left a lot to be desired for a very long time, way before Starmer came to power. Because it was Starmer not challenging anything that Tories did that's led to where we are as well. So, at the time, Nigel did a quick video explaining that he had nothing to do with the riots, and he talked about the lack of information. And obviously, when people are kept in the dark, if you're dying to know something, you want to know the truth, you want to know how to behave, you want to react to something, and you suspect something, then the sooner you get that information, the better. So when it's withheld for basically 3 months, that's dreadful. And the government doesn't have the right to not tell you the truth. Doesn't have that right. And the media was stifled with it, despite the fact of the last 3 years have let the media say quite a lot of rubbish, quite a lot of things that were misleading, that's led to people making decisions with the rollout they maybe might not have made and might not have had the effects afterwards. And the one thing I've noticed with Nigel Farage, he's an experienced politician with 30 years under his belt, of abuse as well. Mainly those years were filled with abuse because they didn't like him in Brussels, they didn't like him in the town, in the restaurants and the public places. He had to pay for his own security because he was treated so badly. But he's managed to walk that tightrope and stay within the establishment, get invited on national TV, which is the most important thing of any campaign, if you can get on the mainstream media, because that's going into people's homes without accessing social media or podcasts. And that's very important at this stage because there's millions get the news from the telly. So thankfully, after what's come out the night before the budget, how timely, that obviously this lad that's been portrayed as a squeaky clean schoolboy isn't so squeaky clean after all. He's been making a biological weapon and reading Al-Qaeda. You know, most people like to read motoring magazines, don't they, and talk about football. But oh no, not this little boy. Big boy, adult. No, he's reading Al-Qaeda. Great. So Nigel's done an article in the Telegraph. So I managed to download it last night, past the paywall. I won't pay for news. No way I'm paying to listen to you drivel on, because most of it's drivel. But Nigel's wrote in the Telegraph. Now that's quite a good platform for him to put it. And he actually starts off by saying, as an elected MP, it's my duty to act in the interest of my constituents. That includes asking difficult questions in order to get to the truth about national issues. That's really poignant to start off with that, because he's absolutely right. And Southport was a national issue because of the fears, because of the amount of times we've been attacked in this manner and have to sit in silence and suffer it. I'll go back to the Manchester bombing. When ITV film crews were going round in the aftermath, filming parents and families in the hospital where the little kiddies were getting better, they interviewed families for the telly, for the news. And one family member contacted me and said, June, they interviewed us, but we were angry and we said angry things about the attacker. And they stopped the filming and said, cut. No, we can't use this. You're a little bit too angry. They just wanted people who wanted to show forgiveness, you know. And the funny thing is with that Manchester bombing, all the flowers and the balloons and the candles were all readily available, like that. Nobody ran out. There were plenty of stocks. Where did that come from? So they could all be filmed. I think I'd call that gaslighting. Only show people with compassion. Don't mention the attack, just mention how we're thinking about... I'm sorry, it don't wash with me. Anyway, he went on to say in his article, the Starmer government has been very effective in using fear to shut down public debate that it considers inconvenient. You only need to think back to the almost unprecedented way the state used rapid and harsh sentencing for those involved in the summer riots, including those who wrote unpleasant things online. The overriding view was that the far right, whoever they may be, must be crushed. But the day after the tragic killing, I could see that certain key information about this atrocity had fallen into a vacuum. This led to unhelpful online speculation. It struck me as vital for the public to know more, not less, about the suspect. That day I recorded a short video. In it I expressed my outrage at the attacks and noted that Sir Keir Starmer was heckled when he went to visit Southport. I then pointed out it shows you how unhappy the public are with the state of law and order in our country. I have to say there are one or two questions. Was this guy being monitored by the security services? Some reports say he was, others are less sure. The police say it's a non-terror incident, just as they said with the stabbing of Army Lieutenant Colonel in uniform. This was on the streets of Kent. The other day was non-terror incident. I just wonder whether the truth is being withheld from us. I don't know the answers to that, but I think it is far fair and legitimate to question it. That's what he said in his video. My comments led to wholesale condemnation. I can only conclude that this was chiefly for political reasons. You bet it was, Nigel. Everybody from the Deputy Prime Minister to Tory leadership candidates linked me to these riots. National newspapers, editorials and media commentators also claimed that I was to blame. Can you believe that? But this was mainly a left-wing campaign. But when he says politically motivated, I think he's absolutely right, because he's caused a lot of damage to the Tory party because they haven't been Tory. And this hashtag that was floating around on Twitter, hashtag Farage riots, what was that about? That was to stir up animosity towards reform. Because both sides of the House, the Labour and the Tories, want rid of reform, really. Because they're going to do a lot of damage, because a lot of people are relying on them. And all those apathetic people that didn't vote can now see that in an election they came second in 97 seats. That means they're up for grabs next time round. So this is why they want to dampen out reform like a forest fire. Anyway, back to the article. Supposedly I had incited the British public. YouGov polling then found that 47% of those asked believe I held some level of responsibility for the unrest. It's extremely difficult for me not to regard that alarming statistic as the end result of what amounted to a concerted political smear. I think he's bang on there. A YouGov poll. Why would YouGov do a poll on whether or not Nigel Farage was responsible for the riots? Is that not stupid? We know what was responsible for the riots, lack of information. And if we'd have had a Prime Minister that had come out and calmed us down and said, we've got a basic idea of what this is, it's too early to come out and say so, but our thoughts and prayers are with the families, they always say that, and we will make sure we protect you in the future. Oh no, instead he just decided to protect one section of society, and we all know who it is. So this, back to the article. I wondered at the time, what were the media and political class so scared of? Although the name of the accused had been published and of this week, although we know that he was in court on new charges, possessing terrorist material and producing a toxin, ricin. There is very little that anybody is allowed to say on this issue. I understand the importance of not prejudicing the future trial, but in the current climate there appears to be no room to separate the ongoing legal process from the questions I posed over in the summer. This is deeply troubling. Yeah, it is. It's absolutely right. In fact, on the 15th of September, Jonathan Hall, KC, the government's terrorist czar, and Lord Carlisle, a crossbench peer and former independent reviewer of terrorism legislation, essentially backed up the comments that I had made. Speaking at a conference organised by the counter-extremist group think tank, Hall warned, one of the problems and the consequences of the Southport attacks was that there was an information gap, a vacuum, which was filled with false speculation. He added, I personally think that more information could have been put out safely without compromising potential criminal proceedings. Carlisle echoed. These words saying, I think we should get out more information if we possibly can. We have learned from these events that when somebody is arrested and there was a potential issue like this arising, the police probably need to tell the media who has been arrested and what their background is. Now, I totally agree with that because I think things would have been calmer had we had more information. A different Prime Minister handling that, who focused on the nation rather than political point scoring and obviously protecting the growing voter base. We all know who it is. It would have been a different landscape. Back to the article. My reading of the situation is that the bar as to what now counts as contempt of court has been lowered significantly. It used to be the case that somebody would have to say or do something that would seriously jeopardise a legal case for them to be in contempt. Now the Contempt of Court Act appears to have been deployed as a tool of suppression. Despite ricin being found in the accused's home day after the Southport attack, and despite claims that he downloaded that sort of material, these allegations are not being linked to the triple child murder charges he faces, or the 10 charges of attempted murder for the alleged attack on 8 other children and 2 adults. 8 other children. The Chief Constable of Merseyside Police, Serena Kennedy, has said no evidence pointing to a terrorist motive has been discovered. Is she off thick table at school? That Nigel didn't write that. That's me saying that to you. Oh, wow. No evidence points to it. The deed itself, surely. No evidence points to a terrorist motive has been discovered. Yet many people wonder how this conclusion has been reached. How could anybody know what the motive for the killing was? Question mark. This week I asked the Home Secretary 2 written questions on this subject. The first asked if the suspect had ever been referred to the anti-terrorist prevention programme. The second asked when she became aware of the discovery of ricin in the accused's home. The questions will not be answered. With almost unbelievable timing, my colleague and Deputy Leader of Reform, Richard Tice, was lucky in the ballot box. Listen to this. Was lucky in the ballot box and was able to ask Keir Starmer a question. That's Prime Minister's question time. That was on Wednesday. That morning, he received 3 panicked emails from the Commons authorities asking what the content of his question might be. Then an hour before PMQs began, he received a telephone call in which he was told not to ask anything about the man accused of the Southport attacks. This point was reinforced strenuously by the Speaker in the Commons just before PMQs began. Parliamentary privilege was effectively withdrawn. Now, the whole point of Parliament is to openly discuss and debate anything and then it can be recorded in Hansards for posterity to reflect on how things were handled. For now, therefore, it seems that nobody is allowed to ask in the proper forum, when the government first knew that the accused was to face the ricin and terror material charges. Likewise, nobody can know whether this man was known to the authorities in any way. Do we really want to live in a society where such crucial information is kept from the public? Who decides these details should remain secret? That's what I thought all along. Who decides that we should or shouldn't know this? Who? I mean, the thing is, knowledge is power. If you want to empower the public to feel safe, then surely you do that by calming them all down, not by segregating society and offering protection to one section of society, which is just what Starmer did, and leaving us lot to flounder around looking for a lifeboat. Oh, the lifeboat's over here, swim aboard. That's what basically Starmer said. We'll protect you, but you lot, you'll just have to swim till you're tired. So, this man, I don't know how he can last much longer, to be honest. Anyway, back to Nigel's article. I believe this apparent suppression damages democracy. Anyone else agree? It certainly shreds public trust, leading me to ask myself, what is the point of being a public representative if even we are not allowed to ask what would previously have been considered reasonable questions? It is impossible to infer anything other than the apparatus of state is being used to manage this situation. What he's really saying there is, this is tyranny. This is a government using its main chamber, the Commons, to stifle debate within it, which would be more akin to a place like China, to be honest. A criminal trial is planned for January. I hope that the full truth will come out then. I know a lot more than I've been prepared to say already, but I suppose Two-Tier Keir and his heavy-handed justice system have caused us all to think twice. But the wider point is that our society is in a serious predicament. If Keir Starmer really thinks that by kicking the can down the road he will emerge from this situation with an enhanced reputation, he's in for a huge shock. Oh boy, is he in for a huge shock. Because I've got people messaging me now on Facebook that voted for him because they wanted change, and it was a protest vote against the Tories letting them down. Because they were originally, Labour supporters anyway. Then they went to the Tories for Brexit. Then they've gone back to the Labour Party because, the Tories haven't delivered Brexit, have they? And how can we call them Tories? Well, they've still got people like Jeremy Hunt in there who, they're not Tories. Not in my view, anyway. So I thought it was a pretty good and very timely article. The thing is, people jumped on Nigel Farage's back, say he didn't do enough, he didn't do that, hasn't defended Tommy. He's not under any obligation to defend anyone. And when you consider that this new fledgling party will be under so much pressure from all sides, from the government, from the Labour Party, from the Electoral Commission, from everybody else in Parliament, because basically your Lib Dems, your SNP, your Labour Party, your Tory Party, they're all headed down the same funnel. It's like a big funnel looking down it, and this side of the funnel will take a bit longer to go through. That's all it is. They're offering the same outcome. You've got to ask yourself this question as well, because I think this stinks. The budget's been hard, and they've introduced some crippling inheritance tax laws for farming. They didn't mention out loud that in 2027 that there's going to be a massive carbon tax for farmers on fertiliser. How the hell are they going to cope? Bearing in mind they've got to buy tractors at 150 grand, and most farmers that are decent size need about 3. So this business of £1 million farm, it might sound like a lot if you haven't got much, but £1 million farm. So what are they going to have to do, these farmers? I'll tell you what they're going to have to do. Probably sell packets of land off, parcels of land off to get the land value down. And I wonder who's going to buy that. The councils are already gearing themselves up to start building on Green Belt. And guess who was in number 10 just 2 weeks before the budget? Larry Fink, chairman of BlackRock, and Bill Gates, who's one of the biggest farming land owners in the US. timely. What a timely visit. I mean, the thing is, I look at that, I think, well, it's just the corporates, isn't it? The corporates and the philanthropists, you know, the ones that swap the money from their own pocket to the foundation's pocket. It's still their money. They just get tax advantages by creating foundations. Basically, it's supposed to be, if you create a foundation and you give 3% of your profit away to charity, a charity of your choice, then you qualify for a lot of tax advantages. You have to give 3% away, but guess what? These people don't treat it as a starting point. They treat 3% as a ceiling. They never give more than 3%. They could give 15%. They could give half of it away. They could give all of it away, but they never do. Funny that, isn't it? But they're called philanthropists. In fact, Bill Gates calls it philanthropic corporatism, which is just what it is. So to me, I look at that. There's a picture of Bill Gates and Keir Starmer shaking hands. I'm wondering who the boss is. You know, it can't be Starmer. It's like, oh, Bill Gates is doing a tour of his middle management. And that's where we sit. We sit with these people who shuffle things around, like our tax money in this country, shuffle information around to keep us subdued, keep us calm, don't have us kicking off, while they get on with exactly what they want to do. But the thing is, while we've got Elon Musk on Twitter, while we've got platforms like YouTube, which we can talk about things, we can inform each other, we can still have an effect. Because at the end of the day, it's not over yet. And there's a lot of people out there pushing back. And now that Starmer is still very, very bad, it's better to have Starmer, I feel, as bad as he is, to open it up to the rest of the world or the rest of the country. Because now even people that normally, I've got friends, you know, who I know in real life who don't follow me politically, school friends, people I've worked with, who don't take any notice of what I'm doing politically. Oh, they're taking notice now. They're asking a few questions now. What we're going to do about this? What we're going to do about that? I said, well, wake your bloody selves up and get out and vote next time. Very disappointed as well to get some backlash from Tommy Robinson supporters who was like giving me a bit of a hard time because of my stance with reform. And as I'm talking to them, you know, they're talking about going down to the march, fair play, and it was peaceful. It was a good day out, and you know, nothing went wrong. But then one of them turned around and said, oh yeah, well, we didn't vote. You didn't vote. You didn't even bother to vote. So you think marching down the street in a football jumper is going to change the world? It's not. It's not, because the world is changed behind closed doors. And the only way you can change anything is to get a few foot soldiers in that chamber. I want to say a few, you need to get a lot, like 150. So that when there's a public vote, when there's a vote in Parliament, it's not going to go all the government's way. There's going to be a few dissenters, so legislation's hard to pass. And we've got a few years to fight this back. And when you think you've got Jeremy Clarkson, he voted Remain, poo-poo Brexiteers, took the rip out of them, people like me. He's not doing it now, is he? How many other people voted Remain and now see it differently? Because I know a shed load of celebs in these WhatsApp groups I'm in that voted to stay because they didn't understand what the European Union was about. They didn't understand it was a European arm of the globalist movement. Brexiteers did. We got it. We got it because a lot of us lived in fishing towns. And so our fishing crippled. Beef farming crippled by European legislation that Tony Blair favoured to enforce it, that was basically run it for the benefit of the EU, not for British farmers. So that's where we sit, and I think Nigel's made a good move at the right time, and I think he can knock spots off most people in that building. Most of them are. They're pretty second rate. I mean, come on. Robert Jenrick goes on a dying, cuts his hair like a bit of a geezer to try to look a bit tougher, talks right wing. I wonder if he's going to put a lot of weight back on now and grow his hair again now he's lost. Kemi Bendock's supposed to be a Tory. Sat up fence with ECHR. You know, we must have a debate. Why do you have to have a debate about it? It's crap. It's outlived its usefulness. It was put in place when things were going wrong. Now they're not. Now it's worked to its deficit. So let's get shut. But you know, Tony Blair's done so much damage while he was in power and since he's left, because he's never gone away. Tony Blair's one of the most influential characters in international politics. It really is. Because of an institute that's embedded in governments across the world, just like the WEF, they have people in the cabinets, and this is what Klaus Schwab, we have some people in the cabinet. Oh yeah, we know you do. This is why we're fighting hard, because this is just an undercurrent of corporatism, where people who we don't want are going to have a say in our lives. So that's Nigel's article. 1st of November it's come out. So that means it's available to an awful lot of people. And Southport has been a tipping point in our country, an absolute tipping point. And it's a very important instance. And it'll never be more important to other people than it is to those families affected, the ones that lost their kids, that never get a look in. All the politics and the reactions talked about, they never talk about the kids, do they? They never talk about how those parents feel. They never talk about the ones that got injured with life-changing injuries. The people that tried to save them. They never get any airtime, do they? Not from people who matter, not from people who get on the telly. Sickens me.